Hi, boys and girls, it's me, and what you see here in front of you is, I'm going to speculate and say this is around 1952, 1953. Silvertone, made by Sears. You remember Sears, that company that somehow manages to keep a few stores alive today. Model 2015 6-tube broadcast band only radio. And since it's a 6-tube, it's actually what they call a All-American 6. It is. Here's a story on the Silvertone. The Silvertone, I was contacted by a very nice lady who said that in her family, she has a son who's 28 years old, and it was purchased new by his grandfather many, many years ago. Obviously, it's Sears. And she asked me if I could get it working for him. Now, he actually lives and works in D.C., but since the pandemic came around, he decided to come up to New Jersey and stay with his parents and hang with them during the pandemic, which I thought was kind of a nice thing to do. And he worked from home. I don't know what he does for a living, but I met him, and he's a very nice young man. So I said I would love to do it. Heirlooms are kind of my favorite thing to do. So we're going to do it together. You're right in front of me, and we're going to get started on it now. All right. So just in the sake of making a fun video that wasn't going to be an hour long and bore everybody to death, I've already taken the liberty of running this thing on my Variac once already, and I had it as high as about 85, 90 volts, and the radio was about as dead as a box turtle trying to cross the Garden State Parkway. So took the radio apart, and there's 6 tubes in the radio. There's actually what's different about an AA6 versus an AA5 is it actually has an extra RF stage, a tuned RF stage, and one of the ways you can always find that out is to look at the I call the bread slicer, the variable capacitor inside the radio, and I'll have a 3-section tuning capacitor instead of a 2-section. And that's what this radio has. So I had said to the owner, I looked at the schematic before they even brought it over here, and I said, you know what, this is a pretty good radio. You're going to be real happy with it. So I replaced the 12SK7, which had no heater whatsoever, and the 35L6 was kind of there, but really too weak to have any kind of effectiveness long term. So I put in a new 35L6 output tube in it. So now you can see here, you can see your current right here, you can see your voltage here. And let me turn the radio up. And now we have good tubes in it. Let me adjust the camera a little bit. There we go. And now let's see what happens. Start bringing this guy up. Oop. It also helps if I turn it on. This has you can set this in the variable position or direct position. So in the variable position, I'm using the transformer, this Variac, and there's also a isolation transformer inside here as well. So I don't have to worry about which direction I have the cord in here for test purposes. So let's start bringing it up and see what happens. All right. Now, one of the things is I also see that the current is going up as I bring up the Variac, which is kind of a good thing. It's telling me now that the tubes are lighting up because I didn't have that before. All right, so now I'm up to, that's about 65 volts. 70, 75, 80, 85. Let me leave it there for a second and see what happens. You gotta remember too, this radio guy only knows how many years it's been since it's been turned on. I think this has a dial light. Let me turn off the light for a second. I think that there's a dial light on there that's working. It's faint, but it's there, but I'm not hearing. Oh.
So I'm very grateful for the product. Well, this is really a supplement with balance.
This is amazing.
It's a lazy conversation to have. Just want to get people riled up.
Well, the volume control, as you can see, is pretty dirty. So we'll have to do something with that. Well, just like with everything else, there's always some good news and some bad news. Now, good news is that the speaker looks like it's in fairly good shape. You know, even when it was playing, although albeit ugly, it didn't sound too bad. But this is disturbing. This is like, it was like a Chevy, Ford, or Dodge van with bad shag carpeting in it. I don't believe that this is original to the radio. I really don't. I don't think this is correct at all. I think this was an added on. And obviously there was a problem with maybe something being too warm in here, or maybe the dial light. The station was by the dial light and actually took the plastic pointer and kind of moved it around a little bit. Look how I don't know if that's original to the radio or not, but I think what I'm going to do is we're probably going to take this guy off and maybe clean it up, repaint it or something, and then we'll put some kind of metal pointer on here so you don't have to worry about this thing wilting. But now we've got good tubes in there. Here's the 3-section capacitor. Here, I'm just turning the tuner a little bit so you can see it. Our antenna is basically, it's a Fairlight loop stick here that's in here with a couple of little grommets and holding that on there. But it's probably good enough to do the job. So just a little bit dusty, not too bad. I tried to clean off some of the dust before I put power to it. Also, I noticed that the original back was missing. So I'm probably going to make a homemade back for it just so it has a cover. And, well, I have a feeling that sometime in its life, I don't think that's it. It could very well be, but I doubt it. I don't think that's the original filter cap. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to change all these wax caps that are in here. Let's see how many we got. 1, 2, there's one down here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Coupler bypass, and then looks like it's a 2-section electrolytic. So we'll change that, and then we'll put a polarized cord in here too. So that way there's no doubt about which way the plug will go in. You have to worry about holding on to the chassis and then grabbing something in fear of being shocked. So that was one of the things about these AC/DC sets. All right, I've performed the surgery. Okay, the original electrolytic, the big yellow one that you saw up here, is gone. That was a 2-section. It was it was an 80 and a 50. And if you see what I've done in here is I've actually put in, this is where I got my pointer, that's an 82, and that's a 47, and that should be just fine. All the ugly wax caps are gone. Sometimes I've used metallized polyester, and I got the yellow ones everywhere else. So there were a total of 8 coupling and bypass caps. And then the last thing I did was on either side here of the electrolytics, there was a 1K ohm resistor. When I measured it, I was getting about 1,340 ohms or somewhere thereabouts. And it had a 10% silver tolerance band on there. So that went bye-bye. Now we've got a new 1,000 ohm resistor in here. Let's plug it in and see what it does. Move this out of the way, maybe. There we go. And of course, I haven't addressed the carpeting yet and the dial pointer, but let's just make sure things are working okay here. This is my first test without using the Variac. Oh, I'm hearing stations.
Attention Bangladesh EBC Radio 1170 AMA आपकी चॉइस আপনার পছন্দের গান এটা আমাদের প্রভার
All right, so we are picking up stations.
Plunderers or robbers, they came with political.
I also noticed that the dial cord's slipping a little bit, so we're going to have to, when I go to take this awful carpet and dial pointer off, I'll probably adjust that out or lubricate everything or both to make sure that's playing okay. Well, boys and girls, it just shows that I'm only human. And I almost made a really bad mistake, or what I consider a bad mistake. And that is, I'm looking at this, and I had actually peeled half of this carpeting looking thing off of the dial face. And I thought to myself, what are the odds of that actually being put on there from the factory by Silvertone or Sears? So what I did was I said, well, let me start Googling this model radio, and I came up with this auction on eBay. And here's my laptop, and here's the actual, it's the same radio, only it's painted ivory. I think this is a model 2016. This that I have on a bench is 2015. But anyway, if you look carefully in the picture, now darn it, if it doesn't look like it has that same carpeting looking thing behind there. All right, the only difference is that dial pointer is straight. So there's the thing that holds the dial pointer in place, and I just very easily pulled it out, and you can see it's warped. So I'm going to try to straighten this out. I'm going to put this in some hot water and bend it back to shape. If it doesn't work out that way, then I'll use a steel pointer, adapt it up to that thing, and I'll just paint it a bright orange just to kind of maybe make it look like that, you know. And what I've done ultimately was I just put a whole new dial string on there, and new old stock 60-year-old dial string. Well, here I've got the original string, and it was looped on both ends, and we only had the one spring on there. These things were nylon impregnated, which means they were pretty stiff and everything, but they do still stretch. And I think even with this string configuration, what was going on is it was still slipping. So I put a whole new string on it. And what else I did was, if you see, let me get my handy skewer pointer, okay? There are 2 springs on here now instead of 1. And I know the original string diagram only called for 1, but reality is, in the physics of the tuning string and the way this thing was meant to be done, with 2 strings on there, if you're on one position of the dial, and then you go all the way to the other position of the dial, and then backing in, you can be pretty much assured that they're going to stretch back and forth evenly. And I did this. I actually had the cover put on and everything, and I was ready to shoot the video, and I even turned the radio on. I'm tuning it around and started slipping again. So now we have new dial string and 2 springs, so that things are going to be nice and tight and still nice enough to move freely from one side of the dial to the other. So lesson learned. Nobody's perfect. Not even me. Okay, I'll spare you all the sort of details of what I just spent the last 40 minutes doing. I put the cover back on, and I took some 3N adhesive, and now it's bonded, and you can see I got the pointer relatively straight. Seeing that this radio is probably never going to come apart for a great deal of time, I put a new number 47 bulb in there as well. For some reason, it seemed like the 35Z5 was taking a long time to light up. So I did a life test on it, and it wasn't that great. So I replaced that tube as well. So what I've done is that I've taken my handy dandy ICO signal generator and just did alignment on it. Now, all right. So now that we've got the radio working fairly well, what I'd like to do is kind of clean up this cabinet a little bit. And you can see it's the natural Bakelite. There's some little marks and surface scratches on there. Looks like in the dial section here, I don't know if that's a stress fracture or crack right there or whatever, but what I want to do is take this guy and kind of clean it up and make it look real nice. We're going to clean all this dust and dirt out of here. And that should make the radio pop. Now, the radio came in also, by the way, without a back. So what I was thinking of doing was, amazingly enough, there's 3 tabs on here, these little push tabs. They're actually on the back of the radio. So it may not be factory, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut up a piece of masonite. And through the magic of careful editing, it's all cleaned up now. This piece right here, the actual bezel that has the numbers and everything on there. I actually removed that, cleaned it, and polished it. And then the natural Bakelite cabinet, I just kind of went over it with, believe it or not, brown shoe polish. Worked it in there, and I do that because it has a lot of oil in it. And that's what plastic really needs, even old Bakelite like this. And I think that's what really makes it pop. Now, I don't know if these pictures are really giving the finish any justice, but you know, after I went over it, I buffed this thing for quite a while, and yeah, I think it's showing. It looks pretty good now. Took a sheet of masonite that I've had it actually for a long time, probably close to 20 years, and just cut a piece out of it. And it's not pretty, but I wanted it to be more functional than anything else because I was so concerned about the dial pointer warping again. I wanted to make sure, I wanted to have it back on here, but I also wanted to make sure that it had plenty of ventilation with those 6 glowing bottles inside. And this is just to remind folks that are not that familiar with this breed of electronics here. So it's got plenty of space on top, the vent. I've got some ventilation here. Now there's a piece of Bakelite here. It's also got the wave rod antenna mounted to it. And it actually kind of comes down to about here. It's a big square. So that's kind of blocking off some of the things. So I left an opening on the sides and, you know, big along the top, so it has plenty of room to ventilate. So that way, hopefully, that dial pointer ain't gonna get hot again and twist and bend like it did before. So now it's all done. There's the finished product, all nice and shiny. Buffed the snot out of that bezel, boy. It came out nice, doesn't it? That's eye candy right there. And the cabinet's pretty good. Buffed it out real good with my trusty Kiwi brown boot polish for the Bakelite. And never manages to let me down. So, and it's also picking up stations across the dial. I'm pretty happy with it. I think the new owner's going to really like it. So, well, not the new owner, but the original owner. Oh. We have a thunderstorm coming around this area, so it's...
Night, located at 1530 Oak Tree Road, Islip, New Jersey.
Transports fell 1.2%, and industrials were the worst performing sector in the Dow, down 1.4%.
It's about 7 o'clock at night right now, so...
0.4%. It could be that some
that's the financials for today.
Greg Rice on 1010 wins.
I tell them healthcare workers are human and just...
EU nations will have to recognize the vaccine certificate, which can take paper or life safe, with device security to help block hackers from devices. A VT.
30 outbound. The Holland Tunnel is about 15 to 20 on the inbound side. Still about 40 on the outbound side.
Yeah, good luck driving around here in rush hour.
Reginald Archibald, an endocrinologist at Rockefeller University Hospital, who treated children who were short for
that's WFAN right there.
Most prolific serial child sexual
the end user who's 28 years old is a Yankee fan, and I assured him he'll be able to pick up this station, WFAN 660 at night, while he's in the DC area.
Judge people because you might be in that same situation and
it's the tone control.
Handle it the way you judge them.
Claim. Call now to get the justice, closure, and the financial settlement.
So there it is, folks. Silvertone 2015 6-tube radio. I hope you enjoyed it. I actually had fun doing this radio, and I can't wait to give it back to the owner. I love doing radios like this where they've been a member of their own family for a lot of years and didn't think they'd ever see it work again. So again, heirloom piece is always a lot of fun to look at the excitement in the faces when they see the radio play. Take care, everybody. Bye.